Alright, this is the moment nobody in Drake's camp wanted you to see. Because see, the second the word OVO started trending next to the phrase 50% stake, the entire internet lost its mind. Every corner of hip-hop Twitter, every rap podcast, every random guy with a ring light and a microphone rushed to declare that Drake had just handed the owl over to the corporate machine. That the empire was gutted. That the masters were gone. That the label, the catalog, the unreleased vault, 43 songs and counting, all of it, had been sold to the highest bidder. And the moment you look at the actual paper trail, that story falls apart. Because there is one word in the Puck report that changes the entire conversation. Not sold. Not transferred. Not surrendered. Reportedly, in talks. And that single phrase is why we are here today, because Drake is standing on the edge of the biggest business decision of his life, and the version of the story going viral is not the version the documents actually describe. Slam the like button if you want the truth without the theatrics. Punch the subscribe. Because what Drake is about to walk into, or maybe already has walked into, is going to reshape the entire idea of what it means to own a hip-hop brand in 2026. And the loudest voices in the room, the licensing lord types, the owl broker commentators, the guys who read one headline and cosplay as business analysts, they are already lying to you. So strip it back for a second and let's actually break down what is real, what is rumor, and what the algorithm is trying to sell you. Here is the fact. Puck reported that October's very own, the business Drake built around his music, his apparel, his image, his flagship stores, his Toronto identity, and more than a decade of turning taste into commerce, is reportedly in negotiations to sell a 50% stake to Authentic Brands Group. Neither Drake nor Authentic Brands publicly confirmed a closed deal when those reports first hit the internet. That's the fact. This is the fiction. That Drake has already lost the owl. That the catalog is collateral. That Authentic already owns his masters. That every unreleased Drake recording is now sitting in a corporate vault waiting to be licensed to a car commercial. None of that is what the reporting says. None of it is what the documents describe. And yet, that is the version of the story every clickbait channel is running with, because outrage moves faster than accuracy, and Drake, for better or worse, is the most outrage-magnetic name in hip-hop. And here's the thing. This is where it gets serious. Because OVO is not just a hoodie brand. The owl is a Toronto emblem. It is tour merchandise, flagship retail, capsule drops, a record label identity, a social universe, and a decade plus of Drake building an ecosystem that most artists can only dream of. So the moment you hear 50% stake to Authentic, you are not hearing a spreadsheet transaction. You are hearing a potential shift in the entire cultural center of gravity around Drake's career. And the question is not whether the internet can imagine a collapse. The question is which assets are actually inside the deal. Who controls the decisions? And what rights does Drake keep? Now, let's talk about Authentic Brands, because this is the part every commentator is butchering. Authentic Brands Group is one of the most recognizable licensing platforms on earth. Sports, media, entertainment, lifestyle, more than 50 brands in the portfolio. But their model is misunderstood almost every time it gets discussed. Authentic does not build every product itself. It does not run every store itself. It does not operate every market from one central office in Manhattan. Instead, Authentic works through operating partners, distribution partners, and licensing arrangements that stretch a brand across continents. That model can supercharge a brand. It can also make a brand feel very different to the fans who fell in love with it in the first place, because product, retail, and regional execution start moving through multiple hands. And this is where the Reebok comparison enters the chat. Everybody is reaching for it. Everybody is screaming, Authentic did this to Reebok, so they're gonna do this to OVO. Ask yourself this. Is that comparison actually solid, or is it lazy? Because Adidas announced in 2021 that it agreed to sell Reebok to Authentic for up to €2.1 billion. Authentic completed that acquisition. That was a full purchase, an outright transfer, a global athletic brand changing hands in its entirety. What is being reported about OVO is a possible 50% stake. That is not the same ownership structure. That is not the same operational reality. And anybody telling you those two situations are identical is either lying to you or does not understand how licensing deals are actually written. That's why we need to introduce a term I want you to remember. Panic delirium. That is what I am calling this phenomenon where fans, commentators, and rival channels see a partial stake headline and immediately hallucinate a total corporate takeover. Panic delirium is the disease. Discipline is the cure. And most of the people yelling about Drake right now are terminally infected. So let's talk about what is actually being negotiated when a deal of this size gets built. The first battleground is definition. What does OVO even mean inside the contract? Does the deal cover apparel only? Does it include accessories, retail, e-commerce, collaboration rights, the OWL trademark, international licenses, social accounts, back catalog product designs, the right to open new categories like footwear or beauty or home? Drake may have built all those associations in the public's mind, but lawyers and investors slice them into precise boxes. The public sees one OWL. A contract can see 40 different rights, each one negotiated separately, each one priced independently, each one governed by its own set of approvals. The second battleground is governance. A 50% stake does not automatically mean either side owns the whole company. It can mean equal economics with different voting rules. It can mean Drake retains creative approval while sharing major financial decisions. It can mean the investor receives board seats, distribution rights, or a path to grow their ownership over time. It can mean the deal is narrowly focused on the apparel side of OVO and never touches the music side at all. Without the actual paperwork, nobody can honestly claim to know which version is on the table. But the reason this story exploded is because every possible version touches a nerve. Drake's entire career has been unusually tied to ownership, image control, and scale. Drake did not just put his name on a hoodie and walk away. Drake helped make OVO feel like a country you needed a passport to enter. Drake turned an OWL into a signal that traveled from Toronto to London to LA. Drake made the brand feel like part of every album era, every tour, every basketball moment, every seasonal drop. So when fans hear that Authentic may take half, they are not reacting to a spreadsheet. They are asking whether Drake is about to trade control for reach. That question is legitimate. The answer is not yet public. So here is the first thing you should watch for. Language. If the deal gets announced, read every word around brand, business, apparel, lifestyle, consumer products, and intellectual property. Those words are not filler. If Authentic's statement says they are investing in OVO's apparel and lifestyle business, that is materially different from a statement claiming Authentic has acquired rights across music, recordings, or entertainment. A logo can be licensed without a single song being touched. A store network can be recapitalized without a single label roster being moved. An investor can expand global distribution while Drake retains total creative authority. The words carry the weight. The words tell you what the deal actually is. Second thing to watch for. Partners. Authentic's Reebok materials describe operators in markets around the world, companies handling combinations of retail, e-commerce, and wholesale. If an OVO partnership follows that kind of model, the earliest signal may not be a splashy press conference. It may be a new operating partner in Europe. A footwear licensee in Asia. A department store rollout in the Middle East. A capsule launch with a partner nobody predicted. That is not selling out. That is a brand changing how it reaches customers. Third thing to watch. Drake himself. Drake is not a passive mascot in this equation. Drake is the reason OVO carries the cultural charge it does. Drake's reputation is the engine. So if a deal happens, the most important evidence of his intended role will not be a rumor. It will be a direct statement. Named creative leadership in the announcement. The first product launches. The visible degree to which Drake stays involved. Silence during negotiations can mean 100 different things. It should never be treated as proof that Drake has lost a vote, lost a veto, or lost an asset. And that is the fact-check pivot every rap commentator needs to internalize before this becomes another internet certainty. The same caution applies to the unreleased music rumor going viral right now. A whisper that OVO may sell a stake in a brand does not establish that unreleased Drake recordings are inside the transaction. Masters, publishing, artist agreements, trademarks, and merchandise businesses can be owned by completely different entities. The public cannot infer catalog ownership from a headline about an apparel investment. Nor can any brand investor unilaterally decide to license, release, or repackage Drake recordings without the approvals baked into his recording and distribution contracts. That is not a technicality. That is the line between analysis and fiction, and every channel currently crossing it is misleading their audience. Could an authentic deal, if it closes, put pressure on Drake to monetize the OVO name more aggressively? Absolutely. That is what strategic investors want. More distribution. More categories. More territories. More partnerships. A clearer bridge from cultural heat to recurring revenue. A brand development company will see untapped opportunities in footwear, home goods, travel, beauty, sport, retail collaborations, and international wholesale that Drake's team may not have had the operational infrastructure to chase alone. Fans who care about scarcity and Toronto identity may worry that wider distribution turns a cult signal into a mall product. Fans who want OVO available outside a handful of cities may see the exact same change as long overdue growth. Both reactions can be true at the same time. The tension is not between good deal and bad deal. The tension is between exclusivity and scale. Drake has spent years benefiting from the first side of that equation. OVO's value was never only about fabric. It was about access. A Toronto shop nobody could walk into without traveling. A seasonal release you had to earn. A limited piece that meant something. A connection to a Drake moment. Those elements made the logo feel like a pass into a specific world. Authentic's whole thesis, on the other hand, is that a strong identity can travel. It can be made easier to find, easier to buy, easier to build across markets. The challenge, and this is the real question of the story, is preserving the thing that made people care once it becomes available everywhere. Reebok is the case study for both the upside and the anxiety. Authentic did not describe its plan as dismantling Reebok's heritage. It described the opposite. Preserving Reebok's DNA while linking the brand to a global partner network. But every fan of every legacy brand knows the experience can drift when products, stores, and regional strategies pass through many hands. Consistency becomes the test. Does the product still feel intentional? Does the story still make sense? Are collaborations selective? Is the archive respected? Does the logo still signal a point of view? For OVO, those questions get personal fast, because Drake himself is the point of view. There is another reason this story is bigger than a single rumored transaction. The music business is quietly becoming a brand rights business. Artists don't just make records anymore. They build symbols, companies, festivals, apparel lines, alcohol partnerships, sports relationships, media platforms, and global communities. Investors have learned that a durable cultural identity can outlive a release cycle. An artist's name can generate value between albums. A recognizable mark can become an income stream far beyond streaming royalties. That does not mean every artist should sell. It means every artist has to decide what kind of owner they want to be. Because control is not one thing. There is creative control, voting control, economic control, trademark control, distribution control, and approval control. Drake could sell part of an OVO business and still retain meaningful influence depending on the terms. Drake could also retain nominal involvement while giving away practical decision-making, depending on the terms. The percentage alone does not settle the argument. So let's talk about the scenario Drake fans dread the most. The owl on everything. If Authentic eventually helps push OVO into more product categories, some people will call it betrayal. Others will call it the logical next chapter. But a broader licensing strategy is not automatically a loss of identity. Plenty of brands use licenses and partnerships while keeping a strong central design voice. The danger begins when the expansion outruns the idea. When every category gets a logo but no reason. When every retailer gets a drop but no story. When the people who made the brand emotionally specific are no longer driving the choices. That is why the earliest products after any deal would matter far more than the abstract headline. If OVO suddenly floods the market with generic merchandise stripped of any Toronto connection, any Drake-era storytelling, any recognizable curation, critics will finally have evidence for their fears. If OVO opens thoughtfully into new markets, selects collaborators carefully, protects premium tiers, and keeps the owl tied to a coherent creative universe, the deal will look less like a surrender and more like a scale-up. Nobody can declare that in advance. Which brings me to the retail store version of a headline artist. Because that is the trap Drake has to avoid. There is a version of this partnership where Drake becomes the face of a brand he no longer steers. Where his name still opens the door but somebody else decides what walks through it. Where OVO becomes to Drake what a legacy footwear brand becomes to a retired athlete. A logo, licensed, well-distributed, financially productive, and emotionally hollow. That is the fate every founder should fear. And that is why the language in the announcement will matter more than the number in the headline. Look, there is a temptation in celebrity business coverage to turn every partnership into a morality play. The artist is either a genius moving chess pieces or a victim being stripped for parts. Real deals live in the middle. A founder may need capital. A business may need operating expertise. A brand may be strong culturally but inefficient globally. A partner may bring distribution that a small in-house team simply cannot build fast enough. At the same time, capital arrives with priorities, deadlines, and return expectations. The creative founder and the financial partner may agree in the press release and still hold completely different definitions of what growth means once the contracts are signed. Drake's reported OVO talks deserve scrutiny because that tension is real. They do not deserve invented certainty. They do not deserve the owl panic delirium currently drowning the timeline. Let's return to the Reebok comparison one final time, because this is where the argument either becomes solid or falls apart. Authentic acquired Reebok outright from Adidas. Publicly documented. The reported OVO arrangement is a possible half-stake with unclear timing and unclear scope. Those are not the same. Reebok is a global athletic brand with decades of manufacturing infrastructure and international wholesale networks. OVO is a culture-driven brand built inside a specific music ecosystem. Authentic may bring the same partner network philosophy to both, but that does not mean the same operational outcome is guaranteed. The factual comparison is this. Authentic has experience expanding and operating brands through partners. The speculative claim, the one being weaponized on YouTube right now, is that Authentic will automatically dismantle OVO, remove Drake from control, shutter the flagship stores, force out unreleased recordings, and turn Drake's catalog into corporate collateral. The first statement is supportable. The second goes miles beyond the available evidence. That distinction may sound less explosive than the average clickbait headline, but it produces a much better story because it gives you something real to track. Watch for confirmation. Watch for the scope of the assets. Watch for who sits on the board. Watch for whether Drake keeps creative approval. Watch for buyout rights if they are disclosed. Watch for new operators in new territories. Watch for new product categories. Watch for whether OVO Sound, music recordings, or publishing rights are mentioned anywhere in the paperwork. And most of all, watch the first year of decisions rather than the first day of headlines. That first year would reveal the strategy. If the partnership is genuinely built around taking OVO global while preserving its core, you would see disciplined product, carefully paced retail, selective partner announcements, and Drake's cultural presence front and center. If the partnership is built primarily around extracting short-term value from name recognition, you would see rapid category sprawl, inconsistent execution, and the owl appearing in places that feel disconnected from why anyone loved OVO in the first place. Those are not predictions. Those are two different tests the market will apply, and both tests will be visible. Drake has an advantage that gets buried under all the panic. He is not trying to revive a brand whose central cultural figure disappeared decades ago. Drake is still an active superstar. Drake can release music, tour, collaborate, show up at a store opening, amplify a drop with a single Instagram post, and redirect audience attention in real time. That gives Drake leverage no spreadsheet can fully replace. If OVO changes, Drake's engagement, or lack of it, will tell fans everything they need to know. But that same advantage cuts both ways. OVO's connection to Drake means Drake cannot easily hide behind an operator when fans reject a product direction. The owl is not an anonymous heritage logo. It is tied to Drake's choices, and every rollout will be judged as a statement about Drake's taste, Drake's priorities, and Drake's actual control. So no, there is no public basis for saying Drake has already lost his logo. There is no public basis for treating a reported negotiation as a completed takeover. There is no public basis for claiming a fixed number of unreleased songs has been dropped into a licensing vehicle. Those claims should be corrected, not amplified. But yes, there is a major story here, and it is bigger than the headline. If reports are accurate and a deal closes, it could mark a new phase for OVO. It could give Drake's brand a more powerful global operating system. It could make the owl easier to find in more countries. It could unlock collaborations and categories OVO could never execute alone. It could also force Drake and the OVO team to prove that scale will not dilute the identity they spent a decade constructing. That is a serious, high-stakes question. It does not need fake certainty to be compelling. The real countdown is not to some imaginary corporate ambush. It is to disclosure. Until an agreement is announced, details remain reported but unconfirmed. Once the terms emerge, the audience can judge the deal on its actual design. And when the first decisions land, the products, the operators, the store plans, the creative appointments, the international distribution, then the OVO community will finally see whether this is expansion with discipline or expansion without a soul. So drop your take below. If Drake sells 50% of OVO, what is the one protection you would want written into the deal? Creative approval? Limits on product categories? Ownership of the owl mark itself? Control of retail? A guaranteed buyback path? And do you think a global partnership would make OVO stronger, or would wider access erase the scarcity that made the brand matter in the first place? Because the biggest question is not whether Drake can sell part of OVO. The biggest question is whether OVO can become larger without becoming less itself. Before the curtain drops on this one, understand the deeper layer. The OVO story is a test of how audiences value authenticity when the business behind a cultural symbol grows up. Fans routinely say they want their favorite artists to own more, earn more, and build beyond the streaming economy. Then a real deal appears, and those same fans fear the mechanics required to actually make a company bigger. That contradiction is not hypocrisy. It is the cost of caring about something that once felt personal. Drake made OVO feel personal on purpose. His name created the demand, but the brand's staying power has depended on more than a celebrity photo. The design language, the owl mark, the Toronto setting, the sense of membership, those pieces gave OVO a separate identity. A smart partnership would understand that OVO cannot be treated like a blank logo waiting for a licensing calendar. The brand has to stay connected to a point of view. It has to feel selective even when it becomes more reachable. It has to make fans believe the people making the next decision understand why the old decisions worked. Which is why the business conversation cannot erase the people who actually build the product. Designers, retail staff, photographers, managers, collaborators, and the OVO community all carry pieces of the brand's credibility. Any international growth plan becomes more believable when those voices remain visible. Any move that reduces the brand to a name with no creative center will be judged instantly, because OVO customers are not buying an unknown label. They are buying the history around it. So the next time you see a headline shouting that Drake sold the owl, pause. Ask whether the deal is confirmed. Ask what entity is involved. Ask whether the reporting describes a minority stake, a joint venture, a license, or a full acquisition. Ask whether the deal covers apparel, retail, trademarks, music rights, or some combination. Those questions are not less exciting than the rumor. They are the only road to the real story. And when a formal announcement finally arrives, this is the scorecard. Did Drake keep creative approval? Are the existing OVO teams still shaping the vision? Are the first partnerships aligned with the brand's history? Is the international rollout paced or flooded? Do the products make the owl more meaningful, or just more visible? Those answers will tell us more about the future of OVO than any viral prediction ever could. And they will tell us more about Drake than any single album ever will, because this deal, if it closes, is going to define the second act of his empire. So slam that like button. Punch subscribe. Drop your protection clause in the comments. And if you want the deep dive on what happens to Drake's catalog rights and OVO Sound if this deal actually closes, that video is coming next, and it is the one every Drake fan needs to see before the announcement drops. Because when the owl finally moves, and it will move, you deserve to know exactly where it lands.